the new arrival in the heart of the Galactic Academy, a place where species from 100 worlds gathered to learn. A hush fell over the xenobiology auditorium. Projected above the stage, a swirling hologram flickered, a blue-green planet scarred by storms, ringed by unpredictable energy. Today, intoned Professor Ulix, his voice echoing through the tears, we discussed the most dangerous worlds ever catalogued, places so deadly survival itself is a marvel. A dozen eyes turned to stare at the hologram as it zoomed in, on a continent of jagged mountains and boiling seas. This, the professor continued, is a death world, and none compared to the horrors of Earth. Sitting near the back, hidden among a cluster of gelatinous and crystalline students, Satya tried not to shrink in her seat. She was small for her age, just 17, and the only human in the room. Her arrival 2 days ago, Earth's first ever. Student at the academy had sparked excitement, suspicion, and more than a few looks of fear. Now, as the lesson continued, Satya realized with growing discomfort that she was the subject of today's lecture. Professor Ulix waved a tentacled limb, and the hologram shimmered. Earth's atmosphere is dense with corrosive gases. Its gravity is intense. The weather violent beyond belief. Lightning, storms, quakes, tsunamis. Yet something more terrifying thrives here. The image shifted to monstrous beasts, tigers, bears, sharks, venomous snakes, and birds of prey. The class murmured as Ulix described each creature's arsenal of fangs, claws, poisons, and raw strength, but it was the final image that made the class fall silent. The projection zoomed in on a lone human figure. Not tall, not imposing, wearing simple clothes. Standing atop a snowy mountain peak with only a smile and a stick for support. Ulix's voice softened, almost reverent. Somehow, against every odd, this species became Earth's apex predator, not through strength or speed, but cunning, adaptability, and relentless determination. They survive what others cannot even imagine. The students exchanged glances. Some looked skeptical, others nervous. Satya felt a flush of embarrassment and pride. She'd heard the rumors since arriving, Deathworlder, dangerous, unpredictable. But as the professor continued, Satya realized this was more than just a class. This was a warning. They cooperate, they endure, they innovate. Never underestimate a human, Ulix finished, scanning the room. Satya's gaze dropped to her hands, heart pounding. Did they know she was here? Did they see her as a curiosity, or as something to fear? The bell chimed. The class dispersed. But Satya lingered, trying to steady herself. She'd come to learn, not to scare people. But as she left the auditorium, a group of students gave her a wide berth. Whispering behind translucent hands, Satya walked the polished halls alone, determined not to let fear define her. She remembered what her mother told her before leaving Earth. You're not a monster. You're a survivor. Show them what that means. She straightened her shoulders, refusing to hide. She would prove one way or another what it really meant to be human-alien eyes. In the Academy's mess hall, Satya sat alone at a table meant for 4. Her tray of food, something that resembled porridge, but with a faint blue glow, sat untouched. She watched as students of every shape and color passed by, glancing at her, whispering, then sitting at distant tables. Satya stabbed at her meal. Trying to ignore the sting of isolation, she tried to make friends the first day. She'd introduced herself to a group of avian students, only to have them scatter when she mentioned she was from Earth. Later, a reptilian girl asked about her survival adaptations before abruptly excusing herself, muttering about hazard protocols. Even the teachers seemed nervous, careful to address her at a distance. Rumors spread quickly. By the end of the week, Satya overheard wild stories about humans, that they could see in the dark, grow back limbs, or even consume poison without harm. It was all nonsense, of course, but the stories only grew with each retelling. One afternoon, Professor Ulix led another session on Deathworld beasts. He projected scenes of humans climbing mountains, swimming with sharks, trekking deserts. Satya listened in silence, torn between annoyance and amusement. The professor described human pain thresholds, their unusual ability to recover from injury, and their insatiable curiosity. All true, in a way but exaggerated. The tension reached a peak in the cafeteria. Satya opened her backpack and pulled out a snack, a bright red chili bar from home. The scent wafted across the room. A gelatinous student next to her inhaled the aroma, turned green, and promptly slid under the table. A crowd gathered, eyes wide as Satya, oblivious, took a bite. She's eating toxins. Someone squeaked. Satya coughed, waving a hand. It's just spicy, not poisonous. But the damage was done. Panic spread. Staff rushed over with medical kits, scanning her for signs of distress. Satya tried to explain, but the language barrier made things worse. The next day, the human who eats fire became a campus legend. It wasn't all bad. On the third day, a small bug-eyed alien approached her table, hesitantly holding out a strange, bubbling drink. Mind if I sit? He asked. Satya nodded, surprised. I'm Fen, he said. I study dangerous environments. Earth's fascinating. Satya grinned. I guess it is. I want to try chili. Fen shook his head but laughed, a raspy, buzzing sound. They talked for an hour about their worlds, sharing stories and trading snacks. By the end, Satya realized she'd made her first. Friend thought it wasn't much, but it was a start. The academy's alarm blared, a rising howl that vibrated the walls. Red lights flashed as automated doors sealed, trapping students in their classrooms. The announcement crackled overhead. Emergency drill. Deathworld scenario in progress. Satya's heart leapt. Around her, students panicked. Some bolted for exits, others cowered under desks. Fen looked terrified, his antennae quivering. The simulation's goal: survive a series of escalating hazards based on Earth's worst environments. Satya took charge. Stay calm. Cover your mouth, pretend. It's smoke. Get low. She helped Fen and two others under a sturdy table, tossing a blanket over them to mimic shelter. The holographic temperature dropped Arctic cold. Satya wrapped them in coats, showing the others how to insulate with whatever they had. Next came a simulated earthquake. The room shook, glassware toppled. Satya counted aloud. It'll stop soon. Just hang on. She'd lived through a real quake back in San Francisco. Her calmness steadied the group. When a simulated fire started in the corner, Satya grabbed a jacket and waved it at the flames, directing the group to crawl out. Staying low, across the hall, chaos reigned. Several students had frozen in panic, unsure how to proceed. Satya, remembering her first aid lessons, helped a dazed student up and guided the group to safety. The alarm finally ended, and the lights returned to normal. Teachers rushed in, amazed to find Satya's group organized and unharmed. Word spread fast. The Deathworlder had saved a dozen classmates, not with brute force, but with quick thinking and survival skills. The next day, Satya noticed a difference. Students approached her in the halls, asking about Earth's storms, wildfires, and disasters. She answered patiently, sharing tips and stories. Some still eyed her warily, but the fear was shifting to respect and maybe even admiration. She had just survived the drill. She'd changed the story the Academy told about humans. The Monster Challenge every year. The Academy held its Monster Challenge, a team competition simulating survival on a fictional death world. Teams would use all their knowledge, tech, and wits to solve puzzles, navigate hazards, and outlast the rest. This time, Satya was nominated as captain. She tried to refuse, nervous about leading, but Fen and a few others insisted. You know how to handle chaos, Fen said simply. The competition began. The simulated world threw everything at them. Acid storms, predator attacks, flash floods. Alien students tried to solve problems with tech force fields, shields, scanners, but many plans failed as the scenario changed. Satya adapted. She improvised. Shelters from scraps, used clothing to tie gear together, and reminded her team to keep moving. When a predator threatened, Satya distracted it with a decoy while the others escaped. Midway through, their food supply spoiled. Most teams gave up, but Satya used her knowledge of edible plants, thanks to years of camping back home, and led the team on a foraging mission. They returned, tired but grinning, with simulated food to share at the end. Only Satya's team remained. The judges, impressed by their teamwork, adaptability, and creative problem solving, declared them the winners. The crowd erupted. Students from dozens of worlds cheered not for the tech, but for the human ingenuity and spirit that had led them through chaos. For the first time, Satya didn't feel alone. She felt unstoppable. A legend begins. Satya stood on the stage in front of the entire academy, lights bright on her face. The room was full, hundreds of students, teachers, staff, and even a few visitors from the Galactic Council. Her hand shook as she gripped the podium, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "I didn't come here to be a legend," she began. "I came to learn like all of you. I came from a world that's tough, but also beautiful. I grew up in storms and quakes, but I learned to adapt. I was scared to come here because I knew you'd heard stories about my world, about monsters and Deathworlders." She paused, meeting their eyes. "But the real monsters aren't the ones with claws or venom. The real monsters are fear and isolation. I know what it's like to feel alone. I also know what it's like to survive, not because you're strong, but because you're curious or stubborn, or because you have friends who believe in you." She glanced at Fen, sitting in the front row. "I've learned that every world has its dangers. Every person faces their own death world inside themselves. What matters is how we face those challenges together." The audience was silent, then applause rippled, growing louder, until the hall thundered with cheers. Teachers smiled, some wiping tears from their eyes. Satya felt a warmth rise in her chest, a pride deeper than any victory. Later, as she walked the academy grounds, students of all kinds approached her, not just with questions, but with respect, friendship, and a sense of shared possibility. The story of the human monster had become something new, the legend of the survivor who united the school, and the promise that from even the harshest worlds, hope and greatness can rise. Asterisk.